The Scales of Courtesy. The courtroom was a place of quiet dignity, where the air seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 stories. Behind the elevated mahogany bench sat Judge Ebony K. Williams. To many, she was simply a legal authority, but to those who truly listened, she was a personification of a complex journey. She often looked at her own nameplate, a simple piece of engraved metal that represented years of sacrifice and study. She was a woman who carried the soul of North Carolina and the spirit of Louisiana within her. She moved with a certain West Coast coolness, yet possessed a sharp New York edge that allowed her to see through any facade. In her courtroom, the only thing that truly mattered was the truth as she interpreted it through the lens of the law. She believed that equal justice was the most vital value of the country. To her, it was not just a legal concept, but a living pursuit of freedom and integrity. She sought to be a voice for those who felt they had none, ensuring that every person who stood before her, regardless of their background, identity, or status, was treated with the same fundamental respect. On this particular afternoon, the courtroom doors swung open to admit two individuals whose lives had briefly collided in a way that now required judicial intervention. The plaintiff, Miss Cheryl Collins, walked in with the confidence of someone accustomed to being seen. She was a social media influencer, and her appearance reflected her profession. Every hair was in place, and her outfit was carefully curated to project an image of success and beauty. Opposite her stood Mr. Jason Sutton, the defendant. He was a man of simpler presentation, a substitute teacher who spent his days navigating the energetic halls of schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. Judge Ebony K. Williams looked at the file before her. The matter at hand involved a sum of $218.69. It was a dispute over a dinner bill, but as the judge knew well, such cases were rarely just about the money. They were about expectations, respect, and the unwritten rules of human connection. The commencement of testimony. The judge began the proceedings by addressing Miss Collins. She asked why they were in court today. Miss Collins adjusted her posture and began her story. She explained that on May 20th of the previous year, Mr. Sutton had invited her on a date and had subsequently walked out before the bill was settled. The judge leaned forward, her interest piqued. She asked how the two had met. Miss Collins revealed that their connection began in the digital world. Mr. Sutton had discovered her social media page and had sent a message directly to her inbox. They had communicated for a couple of weeks, chatting over the telephone and getting to know one another. Originally, Mr. Sutton had suggested meeting for coffee or ice cream. However, Miss Collins had declined those initial invitations. She explained to the court that she did not drink coffee and was lactose intolerant, making an ice cream date impossible. The conversation continued until they finally agreed on a dinner date for a Friday evening at 5:30. The path to that date was not smooth. Miss Collins admitted that she had to reschedule the meeting twice. The first instance was due to her professional obligations. As a full-time influencer, her schedule was often dictated by the length of fashion shoots. On that particular day, the shoot lasted much longer than she had anticipated. The judge acknowledged this, noting that being an influencer was a lucrative career for many, sometimes earning over $100,000 a year. It was a business that required a professional presence and commitment. The second rescheduling occurred because Miss Collins had to care for her father, who had fallen ill. Being a devoted daughter, she prioritized his health, a gesture the judge noted with silent approval. Eventually, the schedules of both parties aligned, and the date was set for a Friday at 5:30. The disputed arrival. When the Friday of the date finally arrived, the timing remained an issue. Miss Collins confessed that she did not arrive at 5:30 as planned. Instead, she walked into the establishment at 6:15, making her 45 minutes late. She cited heavy traffic as the reason for her delay. Mr. Sutton, sitting at the defense table, shook his head slightly. The judge observed his reaction and turned her attention to him, asking how he felt waiting for 45 minutes for a first in-person meeting. Mr. Sutton expressed that he was understandably annoyed. Despite the late start, Miss Collins noted that her initial impression of Mr. Sutton was positive. She remarked that he looked even better in person than in his photographs, a rare occurrence in the world of online dating. She arrived at the table feeling frantic and offered an apology for her tardiness. As they sat down, the dynamics of the date began to shift. Miss Collins, feeling hungry after a long day of work without food, immediately ordered a margarita and an appetizer of calamari. When the judge asked if she had inquired whether Mr. Sutton wanted anything, Miss Collins admitted she had not. She assumed that if he wanted something, he would have ordered it himself. At that point, Mr. Sutton already had a drink in front of him. The judge remarked with a touch of wit that after waiting for 45 minutes, the party usually starts for the person who arrived on time. The escalation of the meal. As the proceedings continued, more details emerged about the progression of the evening. Miss Collins did not stop with the calamari. Once she finished the appetizer, she ordered a second margarita. She explained to the court that she did not like to drink on an empty stomach. Therefore, she ordered a second appetizer, this time choosing fried alligator. The judge followed the sequence of events carefully. After 2 appetizers and 2 drinks, the meal moved toward the main course. Miss Collins ordered a salmon entree and a third margarita. The total consumption was now 3 cocktails and 3 separate plates of food. Mr. Sutton listened to this recount with a grim expression. When it was his turn to speak, he provided his perspective on the events. He confirmed that he had been very interested in Miss Collins early on and had been disappointed by the 2 prior cancellations. He specifically noted that the first cancellation occurred only 10 minutes before they were supposed to meet, after he had already driven to the location. Mr. Sutton then brought a crucial point to the attention of the court. He claimed that he had never invited Miss Collins to a full dinner. His invitation, he insisted, was specifically for drinks during happy hour. Miss Collins, when questioned by the judge, conceded that the invitation had indeed been for drinks. Mr. Sutton explained that he had arrived early, at 5:20, and received a telephone call at 5:25 informing him she would be a few minutes late. He interpreted a few minutes as a short duration, not the 45 minutes that eventually passed. During his wait, the waiter had even provided him with a second drink at the happy hour price out of sympathy. The turning point. Miss Collins defended her actions by stating that as an influencer, she was always working. She viewed the date as an opportunity to create content, especially since she was in the company of a handsome man. However, Mr. Sutton felt completely disrespected. He was an educator who valued real human connection, and he found himself sitting in silence while his date engaged with a digital audience instead of him. He tried to salvage the evening by asking her about her father's health, hoping to spark a meaningful conversation. According to Mr. Sutton, Miss Collins ignored his question entirely. It was at this moment that he began to doubt the sincerity of her previous excuses for rescheduling. When Miss Collins ordered the salmon entree and a third top-shelf margarita, Mr. Sutton reached his limit. He felt that the spirit of the date, which was intended to be a simple meeting for drinks, had been entirely abandoned in favor of an expensive meal he had not agreed to fund. Feeling overwhelmed by a sense of being used, Mr. Sutton decided he had to leave. He told Miss Collins he was going to the restroom, but instead, he walked straight to his car and drove away. He did not look back. The evidence and the argument. In the aftermath of the date, the 2 exchanged messages. Miss Collins accused Mr. Sutton of being rude and cheap for leaving her with the bill. Mr. Sutton countered by stating that she was the one who was rude for being late and for ignoring him throughout the evening. As an act of what he considered fairness, Mr. Sutton sent Miss Collins $20 through a digital payment application to cover the cost of the drinks he had consumed. Miss Collins confirmed she had received this money, but still felt she was owed the remainder of the $218.69. Judge Ebony K. Williams reviewed the digital messages and the itemized bill. She took a moment to reflect on the situation. She looked at Miss Collins and then at Mr. Sutton. The courtroom was silent as she prepared to deliver her ruling. The judge began by addressing the concept of chivalry. She stated that while she valued traditional manners, she would not condone the use of chivalry as a mask for what she described as dating for dinner. She looked directly at Miss Collins and expressed that her behavior suggested she was more interested in a free meal than in getting to know the person sitting across from her. The judge pointed out that such behavior was not only a lack of integrity, but was also anti-feminist. by expecting a man to pay for an extravagant meal during an encounter meant for simple drinks, especially while ignoring his presence to focus on social media. Miss Collins had cheapened herself and the nature of the interaction. She explained that if a woman is in a committed relationship where both parties have invested time and energy, the expectations for mutual support and financial arrangement might change. However, on a first date that began with a 45-minute delay and a total lack of engagement, the expectations should remain grounded in mutual respect. The final verdict. Judge Ebony K. Williams reached her conclusion. She stated that the court was convinced Miss Collins had operated in bad faith and had wasted Mr. Sutton's time. She found no evidence that Mr. Sutton had done anything legally wrong under the circumstances of the agreed-upon meeting. Therefore, the court completely dismissed the claim of $218.69 made by the plaintiff. As the judge rose to leave, the gavel sounded, marking the end of the case. Mr. Sutton expressed his agreement with the ruling, noting that the greatest gift was the knowledge that he would never have to see Miss Collins again. Miss Collins remained at her table, stunned by the outcome. The lesson left in the wake of the proceedings was clear. Integrity, respect for another person's time, and the value of genuine connection far outweighed the fleeting benefit of a free meal or a social media post. In the pursuit of equal justice, the court had affirmed that everyone deserves to be treated with honesty and that the law would not support those who sought to take advantage of others under the guise of a romantic encounter. The courtroom cleared, the lights dimmed, and the scales of justice remained balanced, reminding all who pass through those doors that character is defined by how we treat one another when we think no one is watching.